Greg and I returned to school. It was going to be a long 2 semesters. We spent our extra time researching everything we could find on Bigfoot. Next year, we would know more than anyone about Bigfoot. We had everything bought that we would need and were packed and ready to go almost a week before the last day of school. We had notes from our research and had so much planned to do. The day after school was out, we were at our camp before noon. Somehow in our minds, we had pictured the creature sitting there waiting for us. Of course, he was not. We had decided not to try to film him or try to get any definite proof at first. We would just see what happened. We believed that he would know if we did. Plus, we didn't want to attract attention to him because it would ruin his peaceful existence. We would begin by trying to get him to be comfortable with us. We would document everything. The research we had found was all over the place. Most of it was a total contradiction. We would add our input to help confuse everyone. The first 3 days passed without event. The deer were there and curious. The raccoons found our garbage the second night. The table we had left by the trail was there, but a little grown over with weeds. The winter rains and snow melt had changed the river a little. Part of the rocky beach on the other side had been claimed, but the pool was still deep and clear. There was absolutely no sign the creature had been there since the day we left. The research said they were territorial. It also said they were migratory. I was hoping the territorial theory was correct. I was not worried about predators. Even a lion would relinquish his crown to this creature. We put our plan into motion. We played movies and barbecued. We kept our noses to the wind and our eyes peeled. The first day we didn't expect much. The second we were impatient. And by the third we were worried. Had we wasted 10 months of our time? We'd put a ton of energy into this summer. About an hour before dark on the third evening, we both smelled the odor at the same time. It was much the same, except another scent mixed in. Old is the only way I can describe it. Kind of like Grandpa's breath old. We both knew instantly which way the wind was blowing from. We slowly turned in that direction. We studied the forest intently. Neither of us could see anything. Greg slowly went into the trailer to put a dinner plate together. We both walked down to the table. We were trying to convince ourselves that neither of us was scared out of our skin. Luckily, the adrenaline was winning. Our summer could start. Soon after, the odor went away, so we called it a night. The next morning, it was donuts with melted butter. Greg was going all out. He cooked, and I took notes. This continued for 9 days. Each day, the odor lingered longer. On the 9th day, the odor was there when we opened the door and stayed all day. We were dying to see the creature, but we were trying to be cautious. We knew the creature was getting more relaxed. We were making progress. On the 10th day, we started the routine. We took the donuts to the table. We knew it was closer because it seemed the odor was stronger. That's when we saw it. He was maybe 75 feet away across the river. He had changed. His stature was still very impressive, but he looked older, really older. He was almost white. It appeared he still had all of his faculties. He didn't seem to be as nimble as before. Last year he moved with ease. He moved like a ninja. Today he looked like he couldn't stand up straight. He looked like he might have lost some of his mass. Of course, I could have been mistaken. He had obviously had a bad winter. Greg held out the plate. The creature just stared at us. We decided to leave the plate on the table and go back to camp. We wanted to give him his space, build some trust. He stayed within smelling distance all day again. We sat and talked and watched more movies. We delivered dinner to the table and went to bed. As the days went on, we saw more of him. A quick movement in the trees. Sometimes we would see him standing in the shadows. My birthday is July 25th. We had a cake and ice cream. By now we had named our friend Harry. He was now more trusting. At times he would lean up against a log just a few feet inside the tree line. Harry was around somewhere, so we made a big bowl of cake and ice cream for him. Greg decided to see if Harry would eat where we could watch. He put the bowl on the log. Soon, Harry appeared. He seemed to be in pain. He was just not moving well. He sat and stared at the bowl. He kept lifting his head as if he was smelling something. He finally tried the cake and ice cream. He actually closed his eyes and savored it. Greg then noticed that Harry might be having trouble seeing. We tested his theory by getting up and moving. Greg had on a bright yellow t-shirt. Mine was black. As we moved around, Harry seemed to be looking towards Greg, and he seemed to be looking around for me. I believe we were confusing him, so we sat again and turned on the TV. Harry sat with his eyes closed, listening. He never moved. As it got dark, we turned on the outside lights. Harry was just outside the reach. He looked like a glowing ghost in the shadows. Harry was acting very strange. He would open his eyes for a while, then he would seem to sleep. We finally decided to go to bed. Harry never moved. We both kept looking outside all night. Harry was always there, sometimes leaning against the log, sometimes sitting on it. The next morning, Greg made scrambled eggs with cheese and bacon, then mixed in some hash browns. He called it his farmer's skillet. Harry leaned against the log with his nose in the air the whole time. If it was possible, I believe he was smiling. He seemed very relaxed, is how I would describe it. While we were more comfortable around Harry, neither of us had knowingly been within 50 feet of Harry. We flipped a coin to see who would take his breakfast to him. I lost. I will admit I was scared out of my mind. Harry hadn't done anything that would be considered to be aggressive, and he didn't look well, but he still looked like he could kill me in an instant. I took the plate and very slowly moved toward Harry. Very slowly. I definitely didn't want to startle him. He kept looking towards me, but not at me. He kept lifting his head to smell the air. His eyes were wide open. He looked confused, but he didn't move. I was barely moving myself. I was close enough. I was afraid if I startled him, he could grab me in an instant. I set the plate on the ground and backed up very slowly. I was back about 20 feet when Harry looked away from me and studied the ground. He sniffed the air and seemed to follow his nose. He slowly felt around until he touched the plate. He pulled it back with the speed I wondered if he still possessed. He held the plate to his nose and seemed to have a curious look on his face. He took a bite directly from the plate and chewed it tentatively. After that first bite, he devoured the rest. When he finished it, he laid his head back and seemed to sleep. We both thought he may have snored a couple of times. Neither of us wanted to say it, but we knew Harry was dying. It was obvious he could barely see. When we finally talked about it, we even tried to figure out how to start school later. We decided we couldn't leave him here to die alone. We spent the rest of the day playing movies and feeding Harry. After breakfast, he really didn't eat much. That didn't stop us from trying. He did enjoy another bowl of ice cream, though. Every time he would lick the bowl, he would lay his head back and smack his lips. As it got later, Harry seemed to get his second wind. His eyes were open, and he was sitting better. He seemed to have more energy. It was getting late, so we decided it was bedtime. Greg and I stood. When we did, so did Harry. He just stood there looking in our direction. After we closed the door, Greg and I kept looking out the windows. Harry stood there looking our way and cocking his head like a dog does when you talk to it. He stood there maybe 20 minutes. He turned and disappeared into the shadows. This time we could hear him moving through the woods. His sight was probably why, because we had never heard him before. When we got up the next morning, there wasn't any sign of Harry. Greg made him breakfast anyway. We took the plate down to the table. There wasn't any sign of Harry yet this morning. The whole day would continue without any sign of him. At dinner, we took another plate to the table. The breakfast plate was still there, untouched. We began to get worried. It would be dark in an hour, so we made plans to go looking for Harry when the sun came up. We were up and ready at 5 a.m. We checked the table in case Harry had come for his dinner. His dinner was eaten, but not by him. The raccoons got it. We went back to where we had last seen him. We searched for any sign of where he had gone. Nothing. We searched everywhere for 3 days. We found no clue as to where he had gone. We stayed for another week without any sign of Harry. He just vanished. I had a cat once on the farm. I didn't like cats much, but I loved this one. I had him for about 6 years. He would sit on my lap every night. Then one day he was just gone, never to be seen again. There was never any sign of what had happened to him either. My mom had said that sometimes cats will go off somewhere to die. Was this what Harry had done? Greg and I left never knowing what happened to Harry. We still go there every summer for a couple of weeks. We have families now, and we take our kids out to look for any sign of Harry. We have never found anything. Maybe we will next year. That story was given to me by a guy that I met having dinner one night wearing a t-shirt that said Sasquatch on it. And he asked if I believed, and I told him, well, I had bought the shirt because I didn't have any clean clothes, and that was all I could wear. So I contacted him to have him write this story out for me, so he did. My next stories I've got coming up are, one is a near-death experience, one is a ghost story. So if you have a story and you would like me to read it, send it to paranormallistenings@gmail.com. Thank you. If you like this, please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. Thank you.